The rifle shot echoed across the ridge just as Adam Quincy spotted her silhouette against the burning orange sky, and his heart stopped not from fear, but from something he had never felt in all his 32 years of living on this unforgiving land. He lowered his Winchester slowly, the antelope he had been tracking forgotten entirely, as he watched the woman sitting on the outcropping of rocks that overlooked his valley. She had not heard the shot, or perhaps she had and simply did not care, because her attention remained fixed on the paper in her lap, her hand moving in steady strokes that he could see even from this distance. The evening light of late April in 1881 painted everything gold and crimson, and she sat right in the middle of it like she belonged there more than the sage and the wind. Adam had owned this ranch outside Newton, Kansas for 8 years. Every acre of the 2,000 he worked with his own hands and the help of 3 hired men. He knew every draw and every water source, every place where the grass grew thick and where the rattlesnakes liked to sun themselves on flat rocks. He had never seen another soul on this particular ridge, which sat at the far eastern edge of his property where it met the open range. It was too far from town for casual visitors, and too close to his grazing land for drifters to camp without him noticing. Yet here she was, and Adam found himself frozen in place, watching her like some green boy who had never spoken to a woman before. The truth was, he had not spoken to many, not in any way that mattered. Ranch work consumed his days and exhaustion claimed his nights, and the few times he ventured into Newton for supplies, he kept his head down and his business quick. His father had been a hard man who taught him that words were wasted breath, unless they served a purpose, and after the old man died 5 years back, Adam had simply continued in silence because he knew no other way. But something about the woman on the ridge made him want to find words, any words, though he had no idea what they might be. He secured his rifle in its saddle scabbard and urged his sorrel gelding forward, picking his way up the slope with care. The evening breeze carried the scent of warming earth and new grass, and somewhere a meadowlark sang its final song before darkness fell. The woman still had not turned, though his horse's hooves surely made enough noise on the rocky ground. When he was perhaps 20 yards away, he could see that she wore a simple traveling dress of deep blue, slightly dusty from the road, and her dark hair was pinned up in a way that suggested practicality rather than fashion. An easel stood before her, and he realized she was not merely sketching but painting, her hand moving between a palette and the canvas with focused intensity. Adam cleared his throat, then felt foolish for the timid sound it made. He tried again, forcing his voice to carry. "Madam, this is private land." The words came out rougher than he intended, years of disuse making them sharp-edged and unwelcoming. He saw her stiffen, her hand pausing mid-stroke, but she did not turn around immediately. Instead, she set down her brush with deliberate care, wiped her fingers on a cloth that hung from her easel, and only then looked over her shoulder at him. Her face stopped whatever words he might have found next. She was perhaps 25, with dark eyes that caught the sunset light, and a face that was handsome rather than delicate, with strong features that matched the determined set of her shoulders. But it was something beyond her physical appearance that struck him, some quality of presence that made the vast Kansas prairie seem smaller, more intimate, as though the two of them existed in a sphere separate from the rest of the world. "I apologize," she said, and her voice held education and Eastern refinement, though not arrogance. "I saw the view from the road and could not resist. I should have sought permission first." She began to gather her supplies, movements efficient but unhurried, and Adam felt a sudden panic that she would leave and he would never see her again. The feeling was so foreign and so intense that it shook something loose in him, cracked the silence he had built around himself like a wall. "The light is fading," he heard himself say. "You will not see your way back to the road safely." She paused, studying him with those dark eyes, and he felt exposed under that gaze, as though she could see all the lonely years and quiet nights and words he had never spoken. "I have a good sense of direction," she said, "but I thank you for the concern. There are holes," he continued, the words coming easier now, tumbling out like water from a cracked dam. "Prairie dog burrows. A horse can break a leg if you are not careful, and if you are on foot, it is too far to walk before full dark." She considered this, then looked back at her painting. "I suppose I was lost in my work. I tend to forget the time when I am painting something beautiful." She gestured toward the valley below, where his cattle grazed in small groups, and his ranch house sat nestled against a line of cottonwoods that marked the creek. "Your land is quite striking. The way the light catches the hills, and those trees, the whole composition is remarkable." Adam dismounted, moving slowly so as not to startle her. Now that he was closer, he could see the painting itself, and his breath caught. She had captured his valley, truly captured it, not just the shapes and colors, but something essential about it, the quality of light and space that made it home. He had never thought of his land as beautiful before, only as useful or difficult or familiar, but seeing it through her eyes on that canvas, he understood that it was. "You have real talent," he said quietly, and the words felt inadequate but sincere. She smiled then, a genuine expression that reached her eyes and made something warm unfold in his chest. "Thank you. I am Olivia Anderson. I am traveling west to Colorado, but I have been stopping along the way to paint the landscapes. I hope to have enough pieces for an exhibition when I return to Boston." "Boston," he repeated, the word feeling foreign in his mouth. Boston might as well have been another world, a place of cobblestones and crowds and culture that had nothing to do with cattle and grass and endless sky. "That is a long way from Kansas." "It is," she agreed. "Though I find I am in no great hurry to return, there is something about this country that makes me want to linger." She began packing her paints into a wooden box, wrapping each tube with care. "I have been staying in Newton for the past week, at the boarding house near the railroad station. The proprietress told me this area was worth seeing, and she was certainly correct." Adam found himself searching for reasons to keep her talking, to delay her departure. "Mrs. Yoder," he said. "She runs that boarding house. She is a good woman, fair in her dealings." "She has been very kind," Olivia said. She folded her easel with practiced movements, clearly having done this many times before. "She also mentioned that the rancher who owns this land keeps to himself and does not welcome trespassers, which makes me feel even worse about my intrusion." Heat crept up Adam's neck. "She said that, not unkindly," Olivia assured him quickly. "Just as information, so I would know whose land to avoid. Clearly, I did a poor job of that." Adam looked out over his valley, seeing it again as it appeared on her canvas, beautiful and worthy of attention. He thought of his small ranch house, always tidy but never decorated, utilitarian in every way. He thought of his days, which followed the same pattern week after week, season after season. He thought of the evenings he spent alone on his porch, watching the stars come out and thinking thoughts he never shared with anyone. "You could come back," he said, the words surprising him even as he spoke them. "To paint, I mean, if you wanted. The light is good in the mornings too, and there are other views on the property that might interest you." Olivia turned to face him fully, her paint box tucked under one arm and her easel in the other hand. In the fading light, her expression was difficult to read, but her voice carried warmth when she spoke. "That is very generous, Mr. Quincy, is it? Mrs. Yoder mentioned the name of the rancher. "Adam," he said. "Just Adam." "Then I am Olivia, and I would very much like to return, if you are certain I would not be imposing." "No imposition," he said, then paused, considering. "I could show you some of the better spots, places where the land opens up or where the creek runs through rock formations. If you are interested in painting landscapes, there are sights on this ranch that few people have seen." He could not believe his own boldness, could not understand where these words were coming from after years of silence. But something about Olivia's presence drew them out, made him want to share the beauty he saw in his land, the attachment he felt to every hill and draw even if he had never articulated it before. "I would like that very much," Olivia said softly. "Perhaps tomorrow." "I could come in the morning if that suits you." "Tomorrow," Adam agreed. "I will meet you where the property meets the main road by the old fence post with the cattle skull. Do you know it?" "I noticed it on my way here," she said. "Quite a distinctive landmark." He helped her carry her supplies down to the road, where she had left a small mare tied to a scrub oak. The horse was a gentle-looking bay with kind eyes, a lady's mount rather than a working horse. As Olivia secured her painting gear in saddlebags that had clearly been modified for the purpose, Adam found himself reluctant to part ways. "It will be full dark soon," he said. "I should ride with you back to town to make sure you arrive safely." "I cannot ask you to go so far out of your way," Olivia protested. "It is not far, and I need to pick up supplies anyway," he lied. He had been to town 3 days ago and had no need to return for at least another week. But the thought of her riding alone in the darkness troubled him in a way he did not fully understand. They rode together through the deepening twilight, and Adam found himself talking more than he had in months, perhaps years. He pointed out landmarks and told her about the ranch, about the challenges of the drought last summer and the good grass this spring. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was truly paying attention, not just making polite conversation. As they neared Newton, the lights of the town beginning to glow in the distance, Olivia said, "You love your land very much. I can hear it in the way you talk about it." Adam considered this. "I suppose I do," he said slowly. "I never thought of it as love exactly. It is just mine, you know. My father homesteaded it, and I have worked it since I was old enough to sit a horse. It is all I know. The best kind of love is often the kind we do not have to think about," Olivia said. "It simply is, as natural as breathing." Her words settled into him, finding a place that felt true. They reached Mrs. Yoder's boarding house, a neat 2-story structure with yellow light spilling from its windows and the sound of voices from within. Adam helped Olivia dismount and carried her painting supplies to the porch. "Thank you for your understanding about my trespassing," she said, smiling up at him, "and for the invitation to return. I am looking forward to tomorrow." "As am I," Adam said, and meant it with an intensity that surprised him. He rode back to his ranch under the stars, the prairie vast and dark around him, but for the first time in longer than he could remember, the solitude did not feel comfortable. Instead, he found himself already counting the hours until morning, until he could see Olivia again and share with her the places on his land that he held most dear. When he reached his ranch house, he lit the lamps and looked around with new eyes. The main room held a table, 4 chairs, a stove, and not much else. The bedroom beyond contained a bed, a chest of drawers, and a washstand. There were no curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floor, no pictures on the walls. It was a house built for function, not beauty, and seeing it now, he felt a vague shame at its starkness. His hired hands lived in the bunkhouse across the yard, 3 men who worked hard and asked few questions. He paid them fair wages and left them to their own devices when the work was done. They knew him as a decent boss, but a distant one, a man who gave orders clearly and expected them followed, but who never joined them for cards or conversation in the evenings. That night, Adam lay in his bed and thought about Olivia's painting, the way she had captured his valley in light and shadow. He thought about her hands moving across the canvas with such confidence, creating beauty from nothing more than pigment and vision. He thought about her voice, cultured and warm, asking him questions about his life as though his answers mattered. Sleep came late, and when it did, he dreamed of colors he could not name and light that seemed to come from within the land itself. He woke before dawn, as was his habit, and went through his morning routine with unusual distraction. He fed and watered his stock, checked the fence line near the north pasture, and spoke with Tom, his foreman, about moving cattle to the lower meadow. Tom gave him a curious look when Adam said he would be occupied for part of the day showing someone around the property, but the older man asked no questions. Adam washed carefully, changed into a clean shirt, and even attempted to tame his hair, which was too long and perpetually sun-bleached at the ends. Looking at himself in the small mirror above his washstand, he saw a man weathered by outdoor work, with lines around his eyes from squinting against the sun and calluses on his hands from rope and reins. Not a gentleman by any measure, but honest at least and capable. He hoped that would be enough, though enough for what, he did not let himself consider too closely. He reached the meeting spot a full 20 minutes early and felt foolish sitting there on his horse, waiting like an eager boy. But when Olivia appeared, riding her bay mare along the road with her painting supplies secured behind her saddle, the sight of her drove away any self-consciousness. She wore a different dress today, a practical gray that was better suited for riding, and she had a wide-brimmed hat tied under her chin to protect her face from the sun. "Good morning," she called out, and her smile was bright with genuine pleasure at seeing him. "I was afraid I might have dreamed our conversation last night." "No dream," Adam said, bringing his horse alongside hers. "I am glad you came." "I would not have missed it," she said. "I have been up since dawn, too excited to sleep. Mrs. Yoder thinks I am quite mad, dragging my painting gear all over the countryside, but she has been kind enough to pack me a lunch." She patted her saddlebag. "More than I could possibly eat. Would you share it with me later?" "I would like that," Adam said, and meant it. He led her onto his property, taking her first to a place where the creek widened into a natural pool surrounded by cottonwoods and willows. The morning light filtered through the new leaves, dappling the water with gold and green, and Olivia gasped with delight. "Oh, this is perfect," she breathed. "May I paint here?" "Take as long as you need," Adam said. He helped her set up her easel and then stepped back, unsure what to do with himself. He was accustomed to always being in motion, always working, and the idea of simply standing still and watching someone paint felt strange. But Olivia glanced over her shoulder and said, "Please, do not feel you have to wait on me. I know you have work to do. I will be quite all right here on my own." "I have nowhere else I need to be," Adam said, surprising himself with the admission. She smiled at that, then turned her attention to her canvas. Adam found a spot under a large cottonwood and sat down, his back against the trunk, and watched her work. It was mesmerizing, the way she mixed colors on her palette, the way her hand moved with such certainty between paint and canvas. She worked quickly, capturing the essential forms first and then layering in detail, and he could see the scene taking shape, recognizable but somehow more vivid than reality itself. As she painted, Olivia talked, her voice soft but clear in the morning quiet. She told him about growing up in Boston, the daughter of a banker who had wanted her to marry well and settle into society life. She told him about discovering painting as a girl and knowing, with a certainty that defied logic, that it was what she was meant to do. She told him about the arguments with her father, who believed art was a suitable hobby for a lady but not a profession, and about her mother, who had died when Olivia was 16 and whose final wish was that her daughter pursue her dreams. "So I did," Olivia said, adding a touch of bright green to represent the new willow leaves. "I studied with a few local painters, which was scandalous enough, and then I announced I was taking a journey west to paint the frontier. My father nearly disowned me. He still might, depending on whether I eventually return and marry the banker's son he has picked out for me." Adam felt something cold settle in his stomach at the mention of another man, even 1,000 of miles away. "You are engaged?" he asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. "No," Olivia said firmly. "I am most certainly not engaged. My father has an understanding with Mr. Harold Prescott, but I have made it clear I am not interested. Harold is a perfectly nice man, but he is also perfectly boring, and he thinks my painting is a charming eccentricity that will fade once I have children to occupy my time." "He sounds like a fool," Adam said, the words coming out more vehement than he intended. Olivia turned to look at him. Her paintbrush paused in midair, and something warm flickered in her eyes. "That is very kind of you to say." "I am just stating a fact," Adam said. "Anyone who cannot see that your painting is a gift, not a hobby, is not worth your time." They looked at each other across the clearing, and the air between them felt charged with something Adam could not name but recognized as important, as significant. Then Olivia smiled, a slow, genuine smile that made his heart beat faster, and turned back to her canvas. "Tell me about you," she said. "About your life here. You mentioned your father homesteaded this land." Adam found the words coming more easily now, loosened by her openness and by the strange intimacy of sitting in this beautiful place while she painted. He told her about his father, stern and unyielding, a man who had claimed this land and fought to keep it through drought and grasshopper plagues and hard winters. He told her about his mother, who had died giving birth to a stillborn daughter when Adam was 10, and how his father had become even harder after that, as though any softness was a betrayal of her memory. "He never spoke of her after she died," Adam said. "Not once. I sometimes wondered if he thought that if he did not talk about it, the pain would fade faster, but I do not think it worked that way. I think it just meant he carried it alone until it killed him." "How did he die?" Olivia asked gently. "His heart gave out," Adam said. 5 years ago in the middle of spring roundup. He was only 52, but I think he was tired, bone tired, of fighting to keep this place going. I found him in the north pasture, just lying there like he had decided to take a nap and never woke up." "I am sorry," Olivia said. "That must have been very difficult." "It was," Adam admitted. "But also, in some ways, it was a relief." "Is that terrible to say?" "No," Olivia said. "I think it is honest. We can love people and still find their absence less burdensome than their presence, especially if they were difficult people." They fell into a comfortable silence then, Olivia painting and Adam watching, and the morning stretched out peacefully around them. Birds sang in the trees, and the water burbled over rocks, and the sun climbed higher, warming the air. Adam could not remember the last time he had felt so content, so present in a moment without his mind racing ahead to the next task or problem. When Olivia finally set down her brush and stepped back from her canvas, the sun was nearly overhead. "There," she said with satisfaction. "Not finished, but a good start. I will need to come back to capture the afternoon light as well to see how it changes the scene." "Come back whenever you like," Adam said, getting to his feet. "This land is open to you. They shared the lunch misses. Yoder had packed, sitting by the creek and eating cold chicken and fresh bread with butter. Olivia told him about some of the other places she had painted on her journey from Boston, landscapes in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Missouri, each with its own character and challenge. Adam listened, fascinated by her descriptions of places he had never seen and likely never would. "Have you ever thought about leaving?" Olivia asked him. "Seeing other places?" "No," Adam said honestly. "This ranch is all I know, all I want to know, I think. Some men have wandering feet, but mine are planted here pretty firmly." "There is value in that," Olivia said. "In knowing where you belong and being content there. I envy it in a way. I have always felt restless, always searching for the next view, the next subject. Sometimes I wonder if I am running towards something or away from something." "Maybe both," Adam suggested. "Maybe that is all right." She looked at him with those dark, perceptive eyes. "You are wiser than you let on, Adam Quincy." "I am just a rancher," he said, uncomfortable with the compliment. "You are more than that," Olivia said firmly. "You see things, feel things. You just keep it to yourself, that is all." He wanted to tell her that she was wrong, that he was exactly what he appeared to be and nothing more. But the words would have been a lie, and he found he did not want to lie to her. The truth was that she had seen something in him in just these few hours together that no one else had seen in his entire life, and the recognition both frightened and exhilarated him. After lunch, Adam showed her 2 more locations, one a rocky outcropping that overlooked miles of rolling prairie, and another a sheltered valley where wildflowers were just beginning to bloom. At each place, Olivia made sketches in a small notebook, capturing the basic compositions and noting the quality of light, planning future paintings. As the afternoon wore on, Adam found himself talking more freely than he ever had, sharing thoughts and observations he had never voiced before. He told her about his love for the land, but also about its challenges, the loneliness of the work, the endless worry about weather and markets, and 100 things beyond his control. He told her about his dreams of building up the herd, of proving that this ranch could be not just viable but prosperous. "You will do it," Olivia said with quiet confidence. "I can tell you are the kind of man who finishes what he starts." "How can you tell that?" Adam asked, genuinely curious. "The way you care for your land," she said. "The way you talk about it, and the way you have been so kind to a stranger who trespassed on your property and disrupted your work." "You have not disrupted anything," Adam said. "You have made today better than any I can remember in a long time." The admission hung between them, more intimate than anything Adam had said before. Olivia's cheeks flushed slightly, and she looked away toward the horizon where the sun was beginning its descent. "I should return to town soon," she said softly, "before Mrs. Yoder begins to worry." Adam did not want her to go, but he nodded and helped her pack up her supplies. They rode together back toward Newton, taking their time, neither seeming eager to end the day. When they reached the edge of town, Olivia turned to him. "May I come again tomorrow?" she asked. "I would like to finish the painting of the creek and perhaps start another of that outcropping you showed me." "Please do," Adam said. "I will meet you at the same place, same time." "Yes," Olivia said, and her smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. Adam rode back to his ranch feeling like the world had shifted somehow, like everything looked different now even though nothing had physically changed. His land was the same, his house was the same, his work was the same, but he was not the same and he knew it. The next days fell into a pattern that felt both natural and miraculous. Each morning, Adam would meet Olivia at the boundary of his property, and they would spend hours together while she painted, and he found excuses to linger nearby. Sometimes he worked on tasks he would have done anyway, fixing fence or checking cattle, but always within sight of where she was. Other times, he simply sat and watched her paint, and they talked about everything and nothing. Olivia told him about art and artists she admired, about techniques and theories that meant little to him, but which he loved hearing her explain, because her passion for her work shone through every word. He told her about ranching, about the cycle of seasons and the rhythms of cattle, about reading weather and grass and the subtle signs that told him when to move his herd or shore up his hay supply. They shared meals, sometimes the lunches Mrs. Yoder packed for Olivia, other times simple food Adam brought from his own kitchen. They discovered they both preferred strong coffee and disliked overly sweet desserts. They both loved thunderstorms and found something peaceful in watching them roll across the plains. They both valued honesty over politeness and silence over empty chatter. A week passed, then two. Olivia's planned departure date for Colorado came and went without mention. She had completed 4 paintings of Adam's ranch, each one capturing a different mood and light, and had sketches for half a dozen more. Mrs. Yoder, ever discreet, asked no questions about where Olivia spent her days, though she must have noticed the change in her lodger, the brightness in her eyes and the color in her cheeks that came from more than just sun and wind. Adam knew he was falling in love. The knowledge came to him not all at once, but gradually, like dawn spreading across the prairie. It was in the way his heart lifted when he saw her riding toward their meeting place each morning. It was in the way he found himself thinking about her when they were apart, wondering what she would think of this or that, imagining showing her new parts of his land. It was in the way her laugh had become his favorite sound, and her presence had made his solitary ranch feel less like a hermitage and more like a haven. But with the knowledge of his own feelings came uncertainty about hers. She was warm and friendly, clearly enjoyed his company, and sometimes he caught her looking at him with an expression he dared to hope was more than friendly affection. But she was also a woman from a different world, educated and cultured, with a career and a life waiting for her back east. What could he offer her beyond these pleasant days on his ranch? What right did he have to hope she might feel the same way he did? One afternoon in mid-May, they sat together on the porch of his ranch house, seeking shade from the unseasonably hot sun. Olivia had finished painting for the day, and Adam had invited her to rest before her ride back to town. He brought out cool water from his well, and they sat in companionable silence, watching the wind move through the grass like invisible hands. "I received a letter from my father yesterday," Olivia said suddenly. "Mrs. Yoder brought it to me at breakfast." Adam felt his stomach tighten. "What did it say?" "He wants me to return to Boston," Olivia said, her voice carefully neutral. "He says I have had my adventure, and now it is time to come home and accept Harold's proposal. He has made arrangements for an engagement party in August." "But you have not agreed to marry him," Adam said, hearing the edge in his own voice. "No, I have not," Olivia said. She looked down at her hands, which were stained with paint despite her attempts to clean them. "But my father is not a man who easily accepts refusal. And truthfully, I do not know how long I can continue as I am, traveling with no real plan, spending money I do not have much more of. The practical reality is that I will eventually need to return to Boston and figure out what comes next." Adam's heart was hammering in his chest. He knew this moment was important, that what he said next could change everything or lose everything, and the weight of that knowledge nearly paralyzed him. But then he thought of his father, who had carried his grief in silence until it killed him, and he knew he could not make the same mistake. He could not let fear and uncertainty keep him from speaking the truth. "Or you could stay here," he said quietly. Olivia looked up at him, her dark eyes wide. "What? Stay here," Adam repeated, his voice growing stronger. "In Kansas with me." "Adam," Olivia said, and there was something in her voice he could not quite read. "What are you saying?" He took a breath, then let the words come, all the things he had been feeling but had not known how to express. "I am saying that these past 2 weeks have been the best of my life. I am saying that I have never met anyone who sees the world the way you do, who finds beauty where I only saw utility, who makes me want to be more than just a man who works and sleeps and works again. I am saying that I love you, Olivia, and I know I have no right to say it when we have known each other such a short time, and I know I cannot offer you the kind of life you are accustomed to. But I am saying it anyway because I cannot keep it to myself any longer." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Olivia stared at him, her expression unreadable, and Adam felt his heart sink. He had said too much, pushed too hard, presumed too much. She was going to leave, and it would be his fault for making things awkward, for not being content with the friendship she had offered. But then Olivia smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds, warm and bright and absolutely genuine. "Oh, Adam," she said softly. "I was beginning to think you would never say anything." "You were," he said, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "I have been falling in love with you since the first evening when you found me on that ridge," Olivia said. "Every day since has only made me more certain. But I did not know how you felt, and I was afraid to presume, afraid to hope. I thought perhaps you were just being kind to a stranger or that you enjoyed the company but nothing more." Adam laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. "I am not good with words," he said. "I never have been. But everything I said is true. I love you and I want you to stay if you are willing." "I am willing," Olivia said, and now there were tears in her eyes, though she was smiling. "I am more than willing. But Adam, you need to know what you are asking. My father will be furious. He will likely cut me off entirely, financially and otherwise. And I have no idea if I can make enough from my painting to support myself, let alone contribute to a household." "I do not care about your father's money," Adam said. "And as for supporting yourself, you would not need to. This ranch provides enough for us both, and if you want to keep painting, I will support that however I can. But I need to know, Olivia, is this what you want? Not just me, but this life. It is hard work and long days, and we are far from the culture and society you are used to. I could not bear it if you agreed now and regretted it later." Olivia reached out and took his hand, her fingers warm and sure. "I have never felt more at home anywhere than I have here, on your land with you. The life I had in Boston was comfortable but empty. This, what we have found together, this is real. This is what I want." Adam stood and pulled her gently to her feet, and then, because he could not help himself, and because she was looking at him with such love in her eyes, he kissed her. It was his first kiss, clumsy and inexperienced. But Olivia responded with warmth and patience, her hands coming up to rest on his shoulders, and by the time they pulled apart, Adam felt like he understood something fundamental about the world that he had never grasped before. "Marry me," he said, the words both a question and a statement. "Please, Olivia, be my wife." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, absolutely yes." They stood there on his porch, holding each other as the sun sank lower in the sky and the cattle moved peacefully through the pastures and the endless Kansas wind whispered through the grass. Adam felt a contentment so profound it was almost overwhelming, a sense of rightness that went bone deep. For the first time in his life, he was not alone, and more than that, he did not want to be. The next weeks were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Olivia wrote to her father, informing him of her decision to marry and to remain in Kansas. The response, when it came, was exactly as she had predicted: furious, unforgiving, and final. Her father informed her that as far as he was concerned, she was no longer his daughter, and any inheritance she might have expected was forfeit. The letter hurt. Adam could see that in Olivia's eyes as she read it, but she folded it up and put it away without tears. "He may change his mind someday," she said, "or he may not, but I will not let his anger take away my happiness." They were married in early June in Newton's small church, with Mrs. Yoder and Adam's 3 ranch hands as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple dress of pale blue, and Adam wore his best shirt and pants, brushed clean and pressed by his own inexpert hands. The ceremony was brief, the words traditional, but when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Adam felt something shift in his chest, a settling into place of something that had been loose and unmoored his entire life. Mrs. Yoder threw them a small party at the boarding house, inviting the few townspeople who knew them both. It was modest compared to what a Boston wedding would have been, but Olivia assured Adam it was perfect, and he believed her because the joy on her face was unmistakable. They rode back to the ranch together in the golden light of late afternoon, Olivia's few belongings packed onto her mare. When they reached the house, Adam dismounted and then helped her down, and for a moment they simply stood there, looking at what was now their home. "It is not much," Adam said, suddenly seeing the stark little house through her eyes and feeling inadequate. "It is everything," Olivia said firmly. "It is ours, and that makes it perfect." She was right, Adam discovered in the days and weeks that followed. Having Olivia in his home transformed it in ways that went far beyond the physical changes she made, though those were significant too. She hung curtains in the windows, soft fabric that filtered the harsh prairie light into something gentler. She brought rugs for the floors and pictures for the walls, some of them her own paintings and others prints she had collected in her travels. She arranged wildflowers in jars on the table and planted herbs near the kitchen door. But more than the physical changes, it was her presence that made the house a home. It was waking up beside her each morning and watching her brush out her long, dark hair before pinning it up for the day. It was coming in from a long day's work to find her painting on the porch, so absorbed in her art that she did not notice him until he called her name. It was the conversations they had over dinner, ranging from the mundane details of ranch life to philosophical discussions about art and meaning and the nature of beauty. It was the nights, too, the private hours when they learned each other's bodies and hearts with equal intimacy. Adam had been nervous at first, aware of his inexperience and afraid of disappointing her. But Olivia had been patient and open, and together they had discovered a physical connection that was as profound as their emotional one. Summer deepened, the prairie grass turning golden under the relentless sun. Adam worked long days through the heat, but he no longer felt the work was endless drudgery. Instead, he felt he was building something, creating a life not just for himself but for both of them. Olivia painted prolifically, producing canvases that captured the beauty of the Kansas landscape in ways that amazed him. She had set up a small studio in what had been a storage room, and she spent hours there when the light was right, emerging with paint-stained hands and a satisfied expression. In August, Olivia showed him a letter she had received from a gallery owner in Chicago, a man who had seen some of her work through a mutual acquaintance. He was interested in representing her, he wrote, and asked if she had a body of work he could view. Olivia was thrilled but also nervous. "If I send him my paintings and he accepts them, I will need to go to Chicago for the opening," she said. "It could mean real recognition, real sales, but I do not want to leave you even for a short time." "You have to go," Adam said firmly. "This is your dream, Olivia." I will not have you give it up for me. Come with me, she said suddenly. To Chicago, we could both go, make it a trip together. You could see something of the world beyond Kansas, and I would have you beside me. Adam's first instinct was to refuse. The ranch needed him, and the thought of traveling to a big city filled him with a vague dread born of unfamiliarity. But then he looked at Olivia's hopeful face and thought about how much she had sacrificed to be with him, how much she had given up without complaint or regret. Surely he could do this one thing for her. All right, he said. We will go together. Olivia threw her arms around him, and Adam held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair and feeling grateful beyond measure that she had chosen him, chosen this life. In September, they sent Olivia's paintings to the Chicago Gallery, carefully packed and shipped by rail. 3 weeks later, a telegram arrived accepting them for an exhibition in November. Olivia was ecstatic, and Adam found himself caught up in her excitement, planning the trip with her and watching as she selected which dress she would wear to the opening. They left the ranch in the care of Tom and the other hands, giving detailed instructions about the cattle and the work that needed doing. Tom, who had by now accepted that his previously solitary boss had become a married man and seemed all the better for it, assured them everything would be fine. The train journey to Chicago was an adventure for Adam, who had never been further than Kansas City. He watched the landscape change through the window, fascinated by the increasing density of towns and farms as they traveled east. Olivia held his hand and pointed out things of interest, clearly enjoying his wonder at sights she found commonplace. Chicago itself was overwhelming, a chaos of noise and people and buildings that made Adam's head spin. But Olivia navigated it with confidence, and Adam found that as long as she was beside him, he could manage. They stayed in a modest hotel near the gallery, and on the night of the opening, Adam put on the new suit Olivia had insisted on buying for him and escorted his wife to her first professional exhibition. The gallery was packed with well-dressed people drinking wine and examining the paintings on the walls. Adam felt out of place and uncomfortable in his stiff collar and formal clothes, but then he saw Olivia's work displayed on those walls, beautifully framed and lit, and pride swelled in his chest. These were his land, his prairies, his sunsets, all filtered through Olivia's extraordinary talent and vision. People approached them, asking Olivia about her technique and her subjects. She answered graciously, always including Adam in the conversation, introducing him as her husband and the owner of the ranch she had painted. Some of the gallery patrons seemed puzzled by this, unable to imagine why a talented artist would choose to live on a remote Kansas ranch. But others understood immediately, seeing in the paintings the love Olivia had for the land and, by extension, for him. By the end of the evening, half of Olivia's paintings had sold, some for prices that made Adam's eyes widen. The gallery owner was thrilled and immediately began talking about a second exhibition, perhaps in the spring. Olivia agreed but insisted that any future paintings would still be done on location in Kansas, that she would not move to Chicago or any other city to be closer to the art world. "My inspiration is there," she said firmly, looking at Adam. "My home is there. I will send paintings when I have them, but I will not leave my life for my career." The gallery owner seemed disappointed but accepted her terms, and Adam felt his love for her deepen even further. She had chosen him again, actively and openly, in front of all these sophisticated people, and the gesture meant more than he could express. They returned to Kansas in late November, just as the first real cold of winter was settling in. The ranch looked exactly as they had left it, the house standing solid against the prairie wind, smoke rising from the bunkhouse chimney. Tom reported that everything had gone smoothly in their absence, and Adam felt a deep satisfaction at being home. Winter was hard, as it always was. Blizzards rolled through, and the work of keeping the cattle fed and watered was constant and exhausting. But coming home to a warm house and a loving wife made even the hardest days bearable. Olivia painted less during the winter months, when the light was flat and the landscape monochromatic, but she used the time to work on sketches and to plan future compositions. They spent the long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other from books Olivia had brought with her, or that they ordered from catalogs. Adam discovered he enjoyed novels, the way they opened up worlds he would never see in person. Olivia loved when he read to her, said his deep voice made the stories come alive in ways her own reading did not. In February, Olivia told him she was pregnant. Adam felt fear and joy in equal measure, remembering his mother's death in childbirth, and terrified that history would repeat itself. But Olivia was healthy and strong, and Mrs. Yoder, who had some midwife training, assured them that everything seemed to be progressing normally. Spring came, and with it the return of color to the prairie. Olivia painted again, though Adam insisted she not overexert herself. She laughed at his protectiveness, but indulged him, taking more breaks and accepting his help with her equipment. Their son was born in October of 1882, delivered safely with Mrs. Yoder's help and no complications. They named him Thomas, after Tom, who had become not just Adam's foreman but a true friend. The baby had Adam's blue eyes and Olivia's dark hair, and Adam felt a love so fierce and immediate that it shook him to his core. Watching Olivia with their son, seeing her gentleness and joy, Adam understood his own father a little better. He understood the fear of loss, the desire to protect, even the temptation to build walls to guard against pain. But he also understood, with Olivia's help, that walls kept out joy as much as sorrow, and that the risk of loss was worth the certainty of love. The years that followed were full in ways Adam had never imagined his life could be. The ranch prospered, benefiting from good weather and good management, and the additional income from Olivia's paintings. They built an addition onto the house, adding rooms for children and a proper studio for Olivia with large windows that let in the best light. Their second child, a daughter they named Margaret after Olivia's mother, was born in 1884. She was followed by another son, James, in 1886. The house that had once been so empty and quiet was now filled with the noise and chaos of children, with laughter and arguments and the constant motion of young lives. Olivia continued to paint, carving out time in her busy days to create the art that fed her soul. Her work gained recognition beyond Chicago, and galleries in St. Louis and even New York began to show her pieces. She could have had a significant career in the art world if she had been willing to leave Kansas and dedicate herself fully to it. But she chose instead to balance her art with her family, and she never expressed regret for that choice. Adam expanded the ranch slowly and carefully, never overextending, always mindful of the lessons his father's struggles had taught him. He hired more men as needed, and he gained a reputation as a fair employer and a knowledgeable rancher. He was never a man of many words, but he no longer needed to be. He had Olivia to talk to share his thoughts and dreams with, and that was enough. On quiet evenings, when the children were in bed and the ranch was peaceful, Adam and Olivia would sit on their porch just as they had on that first afternoon when he had told her he loved her. They would watch the sun set over the land they both loved, and Adam would feel a contentment so profound it bordered on awe. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked her once. "Giving up the life you could have had?" "Never," Olivia said without hesitation. This is the life I chose, and it is the life I want. I found everything I was looking for here, Adam. Love, inspiration, purpose, home. What more could I possibly want? I just want you to be happy, Adam said. I am happy, Olivia assured him, taking his hand. Happier than I ever imagined I could be. The children grew, each developing their own personalities and interests. Thomas showed an aptitude for ranching, following his father around from the time he could walk and asking endless questions about cattle and grass and weather. Margaret inherited her mother's artistic talent and spent hours with Olivia in the studio, learning to mix colors and see light. James was the scholar of the family, always with his nose in a book, dreaming of becoming a teacher or perhaps a lawyer. Adam encouraged all of them, determined that his children would have choices he had never had, opportunities to become whoever they wanted to be. Olivia supported this philosophy wholeheartedly, and together they created a home where curiosity was encouraged and dreams were taken seriously. In 1890, when Thomas was 8, Margaret 6, and James 4, Olivia's father died. The news came in a letter from a Boston lawyer, informing Olivia that despite their estrangement, her father had left her a portion of his estate. It was not the full inheritance she would have received if she had obeyed him, but it was substantial enough to make a real difference. Olivia cried when she read the letter, grieving not for the man her father had become in his anger, but for the relationship they might have had if he had been able to accept her choices. Adam held her while she wept and felt grateful, not for the first time, that his own father had died before Adam's life had taken a direction the old man might have disapproved of. They used the inheritance wisely, investing some of it back into the ranch and setting aside the rest for the children's education. Olivia also donated a significant sum to establish an art scholarship for young women in Boston, a way of honoring her mother's memory and perhaps, in some small way, making peace with her father's. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythm of seasons and the milestones of family life. Birthdays and holidays, roundups and harvests, paintings sold and fences mended. It was an ordinary life in many ways, but it was also extraordinary in its contentment and its joy. In 1895, when Adam was 46 and Olivia 41, they welcomed an unexpected fourth child, another daughter they named Sarah. The pregnancy had been a surprise, and there were complications that frightened them both, but Sarah arrived safely, a tiny determined creature who quickly wrapped her parents and older siblings around her little finger. Thomas was 13 by then, already a capable ranch hand who could rope and brand and ride as well as any of the hired men. Margaret was 11, dividing her time between helping her mother with Sarah and creating her own paintings, which showed real promise. James was 9, excelling in the one-room school in Newton and already talking about going to university someday. Adam looked at his family, at the life he had built with Olivia, and felt a gratitude so profound it sometimes brought tears to his eyes. He had been so alone for so long, so certain that his life would be nothing but work and solitude until he died. But Olivia had changed everything. She had brought beauty and love and purpose into his world, and in doing so, she had saved him from becoming the bitter, isolated man his father had been. One evening in the spring of 1896, Adam and Olivia walked together to the ridge where he had first found her painting all those years ago. The children were home with Tom, who had become an honorary uncle to them all, and Adam and Olivia wanted some time alone to celebrate their 14th wedding anniversary. They stood looking out over the valley as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose and purple. The land looked much as it had that first evening, though the ranch house was bigger now and there were more cattle in the pastures. But the essential character of the place was unchanged, the wild beauty that had captivated Olivia, and that Adam had never truly seen until she showed it to him. "I still love this view," Olivia said softly. "It still takes my breath away." "I am glad you trespassed on my land that day," Adam said, pulling her close. "I am glad you were brave enough to come here and paint what you saw." "I am glad you were brave enough to speak to me," Olivia countered. "To tell me how you felt, even though it must have been terrifying." "It was," Adam admitted, "but not as terrifying as the thought of letting you leave without telling you." They stood together in the fading light, and Adam thought about all the years they had shared and all the years still to come. He thought about their children, growing up strong and confident and loved. He thought about the ranch, prospering under his careful stewardship. He thought about Olivia's paintings, hanging in galleries and bringing joy to people they would never meet. But mostly, he thought about this, that he had found the courage to speak up when it mattered most, and in doing so, he had found not just love but a whole new life he had never imagined possible. He had found beauty in his own land, seen through his wife's eyes. He had found family and purpose and belonging. He had found home, not just in a place but in a person, and that had made all the difference. As they walked back to the house hand in hand, the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, Adam felt a peace that went soul deep. His father had died alone, carrying his burdens in silence to the grave. But Adam would not make that mistake. He had learned to speak, to share, to love openly and without fear. And that, he thought, was the greatest gift Olivia had given him. Not just her love, though that was precious beyond measure, but the courage to accept it, to believe he was worthy of it, and to build a life around it. The years continued to flow like water in the creek, sometimes rushing, sometimes peaceful, but always moving forward. Thomas grew into a young man who loved the ranch as much as Adam did, and who had a natural gift for animal husbandry. When he was 18, he began courting the daughter of a neighboring rancher, a sensible girl named Catherine who was not afraid of hard work and who fit seamlessly into their family. Margaret attended an art school in Kansas City for 2 years, honing her considerable talent, but she eventually returned to the ranch, unable to stay away from the land and light she loved. She set up her own studio in the barn and painted alongside her mother, and together they had several joint exhibitions that were well received by critics and collectors alike. James did indeed go to university, studying law at the University of Kansas. He returned to Newton to practice, becoming an advocate for small ranchers and farmers in their dealings with the railroads and larger concerns. He never ranched himself, but he visited often, and his sharp mind and way with words proved useful to his father on more than one occasion. Sarah, the baby of the family, turned out to have a gift for music. Where she got it from, no one knew, but from the time she could reach the keys of the piano Adam and Olivia bought for the house, she played with a natural grace and feeling that astonished everyone who heard her. Eventually, she would teach music in Newton, filling the little schoolhouse with the sound of children learning to sing and play. In 1901, Thomas married Catherine, and they built a house on the western edge of Adam's property, planning to eventually take over the ranch when Adam was ready to step back. The wedding was a joyous occasion, held outdoors on a perfect June day, and seeing his oldest son start his own family filled Adam with a satisfaction that was almost overwhelming. Grandchildren came, Thomas and Catherine's first, a boy they named Adam, in 1902. More followed, from Thomas and Catherine and eventually from James, who married a fellow lawyer and settled in Topeka, but visited regularly. Margaret married late at 35, to a fellow artist she met at an exhibition, and they split their time between Kansas and Colorado, where the mountains provided new subjects for their work. Only Sarah remained unmarried, seemingly content with her music and her family around her. Adam worried about her sometimes, wanted her to have the kind of love he had found with Olivia. But Olivia assured him that Sarah was happy, and that not everyone needed a romantic partner to live a full life. Adam retired from active ranch management in 1905, at the age of 56, turning over the day-to-day operations to Thomas while remaining available for advice and consultation. It was strange at first, not being constantly busy with work, but he found he enjoyed having more time to spend with Olivia, to read, to play with his grandchildren, to simply sit and watch the land change with the seasons. Olivia continued to paint, though at a slower pace now, her fingers sometimes stiff with arthritis but her eye as keen as ever. Her later work was considered some of her best, imbued with a depth of feeling and understanding that came from decades of intimate knowledge of her subject. A major retrospective of her career was held in Chicago in 1908, and the entire family traveled to see it, filling an entire car on the train. Standing in that gallery, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, looking at decades' worth of Olivia's paintings, Adam felt the full weight and wonder of the life they had built together. Every painting was a moment captured, a piece of their shared history rendered in oil and canvas. The land he had worked, the home they had built, the love they had shared, all of it was there on those walls for the world to see. "She made it beautiful," Thomas said, standing beside his father and looking at a painting of the ranch house at sunrise, children playing in the yard. "She made everything beautiful, she did," Adam agreed. "She still does." Time moved on as it always does. Adam and Olivia grew older, their hair turning white, their steps slowing, but their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened with the years, becoming something richer and more complex than the passionate romance of their youth had been. They spent their days together, still finding things to talk about after decades of conversation. They sat on the porch in the evenings and watched the sunsets, just as they always had. They held hands, they laughed at shared memories, they marveled at the family they had created and the legacy they would leave. In 1915, Adam suffered a mild stroke that left him weakened but mentally sharp. Olivia cared for him with the same devotion she had shown throughout their marriage, and with her help and the support of their children, he recovered enough to enjoy life, though he knew his remaining time was limited. "I have no regrets," he told her one evening as they sat together, watching yet another spectacular Kansas sunset. "Not a single one." "Neither do I," Olivia said, squeezing his hand. "You gave me everything, Adam. A home, a family, the freedom to create. You gave me love." "What more could anyone ask for? You gave me just as much," Adam said. "More, really. You gave me beauty and purpose and joy. You taught me how to speak, how to feel, how to love. You saved me from a life of loneliness I did not even realize I was living." They sat in comfortable silence as the light faded and the stars emerged, one by one, in the vast prairie sky. The house behind them was full of family, Thomas and Catherine and their children staying for dinner, and Adam could hear the sound of voices and laughter through the open windows. "Do you remember the first time I saw you?" Adam asked. "Sitting on that ridge painting my land." "I remember," Olivia said. "I remember being so absorbed in the beauty of the view that I didn't hear you approach, and then you spoke and I turned around and there you were. I thought you were going to tell me to leave." "I almost did," Adam admitted. "But then I saw your face and I saw the painting and something in me just shifted. I knew I had to know you, had to find out who you were." "I fell in love with you that very evening," Olivia confessed. When you offered to ride with me back to town to make sure I was safe, I thought, here is a good man, a kind man, someone I could trust. And I was right. I did not deserve you, Adam said. Yes, you did, Olivia said firmly. You deserved love and happiness just as much as anyone, Adam Quincy. And I was lucky enough to be the one who got to give it to you. Adam lived for 3 more years after his stroke, years he later described as some of the most peaceful of his life. He was surrounded by family, secure in the knowledge that the ranch would continue under Thomas's capable management, proud of all his children and their accomplishments. He watched his grandchildren grow, and even got to hold his first great-grandchild, Thomas and Catherine's grandson, born in the spring of 1918. He died in his sleep in June of that year, peacefully, with Olivia beside him. He was 69 years old, and he had lived to see the world change in ways he never could have imagined as a young man. Automobiles had replaced horses in many places, though not on the ranch. The war in Europe had touched even their remote corner of Kansas, with James's oldest son serving in France. Women had the vote in Kansas now, a change Olivia had championed and Adam had supported, but some things had not changed. The land was still there, still beautiful, still demanding and rewarding in equal measure. The sun still rose and set over the prairie. The wind still whispered through the grass. And love, the kind of deep, abiding love that Adam and Olivia had shared, was still the most powerful force in the world. Olivia lived for 5 more years after Adam's death, and though she mourned him deeply, she did not let grief consume her as Adam's father had. She continued to paint, creating some of her most moving work in those final years, landscapes that seemed to glow with an inner light, as though she was capturing not just the physical beauty of the land, but something spiritual and eternal. She spent time with her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on her stories and her wisdom. She made sure they knew about Adam, about his quiet strength and his capacity for love, about how he had changed from a lonely, silent man to someone who could express his feelings and build a family. On warm evenings, she would sit on the porch and look out over the valley, and sometimes she would speak aloud to Adam as though he was still beside her, telling him about the day's events and the family's news. Thomas worried about this at first, but Margaret, who understood her mother better than anyone, assured him it was not madness but love, a way of keeping Adam alive in her heart. Olivia died peacefully in 1923 at the age of 69, the same age Adam had been. She was in her studio, working on a painting of the ridge where Adam had first found her all those decades ago. When Margaret found her, slumped over her easel, the painting was nearly finished, and it was, everyone agreed, one of her finest works. They buried her next to Adam in the small cemetery outside Newton, under a cottonwood tree that swayed in the constant Kansas wind. The headstone was simple, bearing both their names and the dates of their lives, and beneath it, at Margaret's suggestion, a single line: "Love spoken and love shared." The ranch continued under Thomas, and then under his children and his children's children. It prospered through good times and struggled through bad, but it endured, a testament to the foundation Adam had built and the legacy of love he and Olivia had created. Olivia's paintings hung in museums and galleries across the country, introducing thousands of people to the beauty of the Kansas prairie. Art historians wrote about her work, praising her technical skill and her emotional depth, recognizing her as one of the finest landscape painters of her generation. But for her family, her real legacy was not the paintings but the love she had brought into their lives and the example she had set. Margaret inherited her mother's studio and her father's ranch house, which Thomas had moved out of when he built his own home. She lived there until her own death in 1968, painting every day and filling the house with the warmth and life it had known when her parents lived there. The house became a gathering place for the extended family, a touchstone connecting them all to their shared history. In 1975, the state of Kansas designated the ranch as a historical site, recognizing both its agricultural significance and its connection to Olivia Anderson Quincy, whose paintings had brought the state recognition in the wider art world. A small museum was established in the old ranch house, filled with family artifacts and several of Olivia's paintings that the family donated to the cause. Visitors came from all over to see where Olivia had lived and worked, to walk the land she had painted, to understand the source of her inspiration. And always, the docents told the story of how it all began, of a rancher who had found a woman sketching his land at sunset and whose beauty had inspired him to finally speak up, finding in that moment of courage the love of his life and a happiness neither of them had known was possible. The story became legend, romanticized and retold until it took on the quality of myth. But at its heart, the simple truth remained that love found in the most unexpected places can transform lives, that beauty exists even in stark and difficult landscapes if we have eyes to see it, and that the courage to speak our hearts, to risk rejection for the possibility of connection, is perhaps the most important courage of all. The land Adam and Olivia loved is still there, under that vast Kansas sky. The creek still runs through it, the grass still grows, the sunsets still paint the sky in impossible colors. And if you visit at the right time of day, stand in the right spot on that ridge where it all began, you can almost see them, a rancher and an artist, falling in love against the backdrop of the prairie, building a life together that would echo through generations, a testament to the power of love spoken and love shared. Their great-great-grandchildren work the ranch now, continuing the tradition of careful stewardship and respect for the land that Adam began. Some of them paint, carrying on Olivia's artistic legacy. Some of them write, or teach, or practice law, following the paths James and Sarah set. But all of them know the story of Adam and Olivia, and all of them understand that they are the product of a moment of courage on a ridge at sunset, when a lonely man found the words to express his heart, and a woman brave enough to build a life in a wild place said yes. And that, in the end, is what mattered most. Not the acres of land or the paintings in museums or the money in the bank, but the love between two people who found each other against all odds and built something lasting together. That is the legacy that endures, passed down through generations, a reminder that the most important things in life are not things at all, but the connections we make, the love we share, and the courage we find to speak our truth when it matters most. The story of Adam Quincy and Olivia Anderson is a love story, yes, but it is also a story about finding home, about discovering beauty in unexpected places, about the transformative power of being truly seen and understood by another person. It is about the choice to love and to be loved, to build rather than to isolate, to speak rather than to remain silent. In a small museum in Kansas, visitors can see Olivia's paintings and Adam's tools, letters they wrote to each other and photographs of their family. They can read about the ranch's history and the couple's contribution to the cultural life of the state. But what they cannot see, what cannot be captured in artifacts or documents, is the feeling of sitting on that porch at sunset with the person you love, watching the day fade into night, knowing that you are exactly where you belong. That feeling, that certainty, that peace, that is what Adam and Olivia gave each other on that April evening in 1881, when their lives intersected on a ridge overlooking a Kansas valley. And that is what they built together, day by day, year by year, through joy and sorrow, through easy times and hard ones, until death parted them but could not diminish what they had shared. Their love story ended as all love stories must, with death and parting and grief. But it also continues, living on in the memories of their descendants, in the paintings that still hang in galleries, in the land that still bears the mark of Adam's stewardship, in the legacy of courage and love they left behind. Because in the end, that is all any of us can hope for, to love and be loved, to build something that outlasts us, to have the courage to speak when silence would be easier, and to create beauty in whatever way we can. Adam and Olivia did all of that and more in their story, beginning with a woman sketching at sunset and a rancher brave enough to speak his heart, reminds us that love, when given freely and received with grace, can transform not just two lives but generations, echoing forward through time like ripples in still water, touching lives not yet lived and hearts not yet born. And somewhere, in that place beyond time where all stories eventually lead, perhaps they are together still, sitting on their porch, watching the sunset, holding hands as they always did, at peace in the knowledge that their love was real, was lasting, was everything they needed it to be and more than they had ever dared to dream.